know. Pick some winners and then we say, let's go. So come
Live on a Tuesday afternoon. Welcome, everybody, to the latest edition of Betting Weekly Hardball, a betting show for baseball bettors. Along with Doug Kezirian, I'm Adam the Bull. And Doug, we got a lot to get to today, a full slate of games on this Tuesday. How'd you do yesterday?
It is what it is. You know, I did well with the first 500, but both run lines did not cash. It is what it is. But you know, one of those games they lost outright, right? The Padres. So that's also the perk of not laying the 225 or whatever it was and going for the run line. There are scenarios like that, and that's okay. And it is what it is. So you know, you just have to take it in stride. But the Padres had the lead and just blew it.
Yeah, they certainly did. And that's and baseball, and we've talked about this a little bit, but baseball, which is the hardest sport to bet on. And it really is, because it's the most unpredictable just by the nature of the game. The better team wins less often in baseball than any other sport. And it's become even harder because the fact that starting pitchers generally don't go deep into games. And all it takes is one relief pitcher to have a bad day, even the guy who might be really good. You saw the other day, I can't remember, it was Saturday, I think, Cage Smith of Cleveland, who's been arguably the best relief pitcher in baseball since making his major league debut last year, gave up three. I can't remember if it was 3 or 4 runs, but in one inning. And these things happen. And those things don't happen as often in the other sports, which makes it a challenge. And only sharp people bet baseball. And that's why that's the challenge of it. It makes it fun.
Yeah, I know a lot of sharp bettors who actually stopped betting baseball after the All-Star break. They think the market is just shaped so much that it's just as tight as can be in the straddle, which is the difference between the two money lines. So let's say it's minus 110 on each side. That's a 20-cent straddle. Okay, so it's just the gap.
Yeah.
They say straddle, and basically it's just too hard to win money when there's a straddle, and that's how tight the market is. So that. Again, that's one school of thought. Obviously, different people have different models. So I wouldn't, put that as a rule of thumb, but that's something to consider in terms of how just, difficult this market can get. But those are math guys fighting with math guys on the lines. Yeah. And we as eye test guys can certainly pick our spots more favorably.
Folks, if you want even more info than we provide here at Betting Weekly Hardball, sign up for the newsletter, bettingweeklystudios.com, for weekly betting tips and Betting Weekly Insider. So check that out, bettingweeklystudios.com. Get the newsletter. All right, Doug, let's get to our first game of the day. Let's start with the Cardinals and Phillies. A lot of people thought the Cardinals would stink when the season started. I'm certainly one of those people. They didn't get off to a particularly good start. But the Cardinals right now are the hottest team in baseball. They've won 9 in a row. They're just a game back of the Cubs in the NL Central as of this morning. They are sitting with a record of 23-19. As I mentioned, 9 in a row, though the Twins are hot too with 8 in a row. But, man, this has just been a crazy streak from a team you wouldn't have expected it from here.
Right. So the question is this team for real? I mean, every year we see teams make a run to the playoffs late, but even some all season that just don't give in and actually hang on. So a couple things to keep in mind, and I've mentioned this before, but it's worth mentioning again. As sports bettors, we have FOMO. We really hate seeing a bet we liked or thought about and seeing it win, and we didn't jump on it. So I feel your pain out there, but another thing to keep in mind is when we see a win streak and you wonder if you're so late, you're too late to it, right? It has been 9 straight games. But some people also think to bet into the win streak. And I caution you, because think about it this way. If you join a win streak, the worst you can do is lose once. Okay. Let's just say you jump in today and they lose. Fine. But if you try to get cute and bet into the win streak, well, the best you can do is win once, but you can lose a bunch. So I would just caution people who try to be zag when everyone's zigging and trying to be so cute and macho and go for that social media flex when a team is losing, that you're the only one who called it. You can only be right once.
That's right.
But you can be wrong and have a lot of egg on your face betting into something. Now, with that being said, Cardinals this is a coin flip, but they've been underdogs a little bit. But they're also, during just even with the 9 straight wins, and some have come on the road, like they just won a series on the road, but they are still under 500 at 8-13, and they're facing a really good Philly team that's been hot. And it was a once-run game, 3-2 pitchers duel, got to not extras, but late innings. And so, yes, they did what they needed to do yesterday to win, but I don't think it's sustainable, master of the obvious. But I would just be careful trying to jump in at this point. Now, if you like the matchup in a vacuum and things like that, yeah, I do believe in teams hitting the ball and they're feeling themselves, and they don't want this streak to end. So they're in a good place right now. I don't handicap this game as a vacuum. I do factor in that it's a team I want to bet on. I don't want to get cute and try to bet into the streak, but I think beating whoever they beat, the Pirates, the Nationals. I mean, they weren't exactly going through a murderer's row of opponents. And they did get the Mets twice at the end of that series, but then beating the Pirates and Nats, like, okay. But the consistency is really important, and they've been delivering. So it's a pass for me. I don't love it. But, the fact that they're underdogs here and things like that, it does make it enticing to a certain extent.
A couple other notes here. You've got the Phillies, even though the Cardinals have won 9 in a row, you said the Phillies had been hot, and you're right. They've won 11 of 15.
Right.
And they have not lost back-to-back games in close to 3 weeks. They had a 5-game losing streak before they started the stretch of 11 and 15. But unlike the Cardinals, the Phillies have played good teams during this stretch. The only bad team they played during the stretch was the Nationals. In this stretch where they've won 11 and 15, they beat the Cubs 2 out of 3. They beat the Diamondbacks 2 out of 3. They swept the Rays, and they won 2 out of 3 against the Guardians. Those are all pretty good to very good teams. And Jesus Luzardo, the Phillies are 6-2 when he pitches. Another odd stat for you: 3 of the games he started have gone into extra innings in the last five times he's pitched. That probably means absolutely nothing, but I just thought it was an interesting little tidbit. There's the pitching matchup. It should be a fun game to watch, if nothing else. Sonny Gray and Jesus Luzardo. I like the pitching matchup.
Yeah, and yesterday I was on the first 5 under. It was a win, which was nice. Yeah. But sometimes those are smart ways to play it. I know a sharp guy who bet +1.5 with the Cardinals, thinking, you don't see that often. You don't see the +1.5.
Right.
In this case, it's -182 because it's supposed to be a pitcher's duel, things like that. But I would not advise that. But there's something to be said about taking the +1.5. It's a rare option, but you get in late innings. You're getting the plus on the the road team. So that means the home team's not trying to win by multiple runs, and especially in extras. So that's something to consider. But, -182 is always a factor you got to be careful of.
Every day is a good day to bet using the BetRivers app or the BetRivers website. And Tuesday, we got some specials for you. The house special today, there are 5 boosted BetRivers baseball house specials today, including Francisco Lindor or Juan Soto to hit a home run at +170, and Nick Castellanos and Bryce Harper to combine for at least 3 hits at +125. So check out those specials on the BetRivers app. Let's get to the next game here, Doug. Let's go to the Twins and the Orioles. Talked about a hot team there in the Cardinals 9 in a row. The Twins as well. You look at the AL Central. Some of those teams got off to bad starts in the AL Central. Cleveland, not a great start. Kansas City, not a great start. Minnesota, not a great start. But all of them playing much better. Obviously, Detroit's been great all season. But right now, the Tigers have the best record in the American League. The Guardians and Royals are tied for the second best record with the Yankees. And now the Twins are over 500 with their 8-game winning streak at 21-20. So going back to last year, that division has been a lot tougher than people think on paper. The Twins tonight in action, and they're trying to continue their winning streak and make it 9 in a row. They're playing the Baltimore Orioles, a team that has not been great, obviously, but better at home. Simeon, Woods, Richardson for the Twins. Cade Povich for the Orioles, Doug. What are you looking at in this game?
Yeah, so the Twins obviously proving a lot of doubters wrong. But the thing is these two teams just played, right? And the Twins, given their win streak of 8, just swept them at home. And now they're in Camden. And they faced each other. The batting lineups faced the pitchers, just not in the same game. And I'm expecting runs, man. The Twins got to, both of these pitchers got touched up a little bit in the last game. So I'm going to expect some runs here. First 5 over. Now, why is the first 5 and not the game? Well, I'd rather just isolate the starting pitching here. Now, I don't get the option in case there's extras with the ghost runner, but that's baked into the line, all things considered. I'd rather just focus on the starting pitching matchup. So I want to fade both guys. It's just that's what I like to do. Now, some guys I know like to break up their bets. It's in other sports too, NBA, NFL, and play first. If they like the over, do maybe 30% of their bet on the first half over, the game 70%, just to remove some variance. I could understand that for sure. But I would rather do the over 5.5 plus money runs, that is, in the first 5 innings. There's ways to do first 3 innings too. In this case, it's 2.5. But I'm okay with the first 5. I think they get to them, even if it takes the second time through the lineup. I think one of these pitchers will get touched up. And so at Bet Rivers, it's plus 104. Got to love the plus money. Now, you got to get 6 runs here, which is a decent amount. But with these starters involved, I don't think any of them is going to throw BBs and pitch lights out. So I think this is like a 5-2 kind of situation after 5 innings.
The Orioles have been one of the maybe the biggest disappointment in all of baseball. Yeah. I mean, they've been a perennial World Series contender the last few years. I know they've had injuries to their pitching staff, but their lineup hasn't been great. What a huge disappointment. You think they're going to turn it around?
Yes, but sneaking up on teams, and we know this in all sports, is a lot easier than playing with the spotlight or the bullseye on your back. And so expectations is difficult. We used to think in the NBA that everything was incremental, right? Oh, you had to lose in the conference semis before you get to the conference finals, and because that's what Jordan did, right? He had to go through the Pistons and then he never really went through the Celtics, but the Pistons, and then it was his turn. I don't know. I just think it's tough to play with expectations, and it's also the disease of more, right? Every guy, when things go really, really, really well, like championships, people want, to get their attention and get their props. Now, the Orioles aren't in that situation, but winning in baseball is really tough, especially when you don't have just like the Dodgers payroll, the Yankees payroll.
Sure.
The stars have to align and the timing of everything has to fit. So things can work well. And then especially if your division, the timing is not great. So you can catch a lot of favorable outcomes and things like that. But sometimes you just run into other good teams and then stuff doesn't quite deliver. I think there's a lot of time left this season for Baltimore to turn it around. Maybe they have to make a move well before the deadline. But you're right. I think they're the biggest disappointment so far, given where they are in the standings and what we expected coming in. But it is hard to match expectations. That's why there's such a thing called gambling, because that's why they play the games, right? So I would just be careful thinking it's definitely going to turn around, because we've had seasons where teams that we thought were going to be good, the wheels came off. And it doesn't have to mean that they're going to have the worst record in the big leagues, but it also means that they're not going to ever get it back, so to speak, and find betting value. There's teams that are just bad bets all season. And I'd be just careful, assuming that things will regress towards the median, so to speak.
One positive of the Orioles is that it looks like Jackson Holliday, the number 1 prospect from a couple of years ago, is finally starting to put it all together now.
Of course, the Blue Jays come to mind last year, right? We thought we had higher expectations than dead last a year ago, and being 35 games under 500 or whatever it was. So certain teams can fall flat if things don't go well. Then there's an injury and blah, blah, blah. So I would just be careful. But Baltimore is down. If you bet on them every game, you're down 10.5 units. So among the worst in baseball outside of the Colorado Rockies, of course. So I'd just be careful there. That's the kind of situation I would wait for them to turn it around. I would rather be late to the party than early. So I would just join the excitement when they turn things around. But in terms of this game, given Minnesota's won 8 straight, if I had to pick a side, I would take the road underdog here. I really would.
If you are watching us live right now, you can send us a message in the YouTube chat, just like Byron did. Byron said, "Afternoon, gents. The Cardinals may just be a product of a very weak group of baseball teams. It seems to me that this particular season has a weaker field than I can remember." Do you buy that, Doug? You buy what he's selling there?
Maybe. I mean, again, it's still early, quarter of the way through the season. Maybe. I'm not willing to say no, but I'm also not willing to say yes, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I don't think the field's weak, especially in the American League and the National League. I think the American League is kind of, I don't think there's any team I love. I know Detroit's been great. But I think in the National League, there's some real very good teams. But, yeah, as you said, time will tell. It's too early. We are at the quarter pole, so I think at this point we start making more judgments, but there's still a long way to go. Another message in the chat is from Corey. We mentioned Corey's message yesterday. He goes, my run of fading the Cubs ended yesterday. Yes. What was that?
He said he was poking the bull yesterday.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Yes,
Not
he
the bear,
was.
the bull.
But his run of fading the Cubs ended, although it looked good early. It was a 0-0 game in the fifth inning, and then the Cubs put up a 5 spot in the fifth on home runs by Dansby Swanson and Seiya Suzuki, and the Cubs win that game. But, yeah, that happens in a hurry. You know, these starting pitchers, Cal Quantrill was starting for Miami last night, and he was dominating through 4. But he's the type of pitcher that once you get to the fifth inning, it could fall apart quickly. And that's exactly what happened. Corey had another comment, and it leads us to our next game. And the next game on the docket is the Red Sox and the Tigers. Corey has this to say. He says, I like Detroit at home versus Boston today. Why is it minus 110 on both sides? Shouldn't Detroit be favored? Detroit has a better record, and they're at home where they're 15-5. So I ask you that question there, Doug. Why is Detroit not favored in this one?
Well, in these situations, it just comes down to, I'm assuming both teams healthy, the pitching matchup, right? Because I was going to say, it's like the quarterback being the most important position in all of sports, and that's what shapes it, right? And we talked last week about how sometimes the first 5 money line will be skewed a certain way in relation to the game line, or the full game line, kind of like when Skeens is pitching or something like that, where there's a distinct gap between starting pitcher and then like the team's overall sort of value. But Bello's been an interesting cat the last couple years. He's sort of had his moments where he's like a big game pitcher, if you will. And I like betting on him, to be honest. And I kind of like him in Fenway, which can be tough on a lot of pitchers. And he's always, in my eyes, whenever I've backed him, he's pitched pretty well. He's had 1 road start this year, 6 innings, 3 earned. Red Sox, I guess, starting to hit a little bit. They're under 500, but the Tigers are really good. But just to answer the question is, the math guys, when I say math, they do modeling and projections, okay? And they are the ones who influence the market. And how do they do data? Well, they use data from last season as sort of a baseline. And yes, data from this year also goes into their computers, but it's not just about this year. So you mentioned that they're 15-5. Yes, but a larger sample size using data from last year of each player based on where they were, and then projections, not just how the Tigers did last year, but how each of these players did. And then they do modeling and the advanced metrics that we know about XFIP and everything like that. So using a larger sample size than just games this year, that's how they're trying to project how the Tigers and Red Sox would perform if you simulated this matchup today, I don't know, 10,000 times.
Right.
So that's the process. Now, that is a lot of headache and a lot of math and stuff, to your point, where you can get edges. And I mentioned earlier in the show how a lot of pro bettors think that the baseball market is just kind of hard to beat the second half of the season because all the data in the first half.
Mm-hmm.
But it is a softer market now. So if you believe the Tigers are for real and the market can be sort of stubborn, and because they're using last year's numbers and not this year's, and obviously players can change, players can improve, personal lives can change from one season to other. Like, I do think there's value betting on the Tigers right now. So I'm of the belief that the Tigers would be the only side I would play. What got me off this game is I do typically like Bello in these situations. And I mean, it's a bullpen game, right, for the Tigers. So that I just don't know what I'm getting, so to speak.
Yeah, the Tigers are starting an opener, Tyler Holton, who has pitched really well, but he's only going to pitch an inning change. What they're doing today, I don't know if they've officially done it yet, but they're going to call up Kiter Montero. He's a guy who's a starter down in the minors. He's often pitched following an opener. They did it late last year with him. He's been up and down between the minors and the majors this year. His first 2 starts, when he faced, an okay lineup in Milwaukee and a good lineup in San Diego, he gave up 8 earned runs and 9 1/3. Not good. His on April 26th, he pitched against Baltimore. He only went 4 1/3. He did only give up 1 run. Now, his last start, because they just did this with him 5 days ago, he pitched in a doubleheader game against the Rockies, and he was great. And now they're calling him up again. But, I mean, he went 8 innings against the Rockies, gave up only 8 base runners, a run, and 2 strikeouts. But as we've talked about, that's the Rockies. I mean, you got to kind of throw anything against the Rockies out the window. So that could be part of it, too, because Montero, the Tigers' starting rotation has been great. Montero, right now, being their 5th starter, has been up and down, is probably the least reliable of their starting pitchers, even though he's not technically starting today. So there you go with the Red Sox.
It'll be a good game, and it's national television. So some people who don't have the baseball package, you get a little out-of-market action with the Tigers hosting the Red Sox. So it should be a nice, fun game in middle of May, which is all you can ask for.
I'm curious, Doug, but this has nothing to do with betting. But everything in Vegas has to do with betting. But in Vegas, I know there's so many people that are from other places. But if you had to say who's the most popular team of people from Vegas in Major League Baseball, can you definitively answer that?
So it's funny for NBA during like peak Kobe era when they were playing the Celtics in the finals. People used to joke that Vegas is an LA suburb because it was such a big Laker town, which is it's a huge brand. Lakers have a national following and things like that. But for baseball, to your point, it's such a transient city.
Yeah.
And if you have a cable package like I do, you want to just take a flamethrower to the place because there's like 9 teams blacked out, like the Mariners, all the NorCal and SoCal teams, and all this stuff. It's just now DirecTV is different. You obviously have YouTube TV. There's ways to circumvent things and things like that, but there's no one that lays claim to it. You want to honestly, there's probably just more Yankee fans here because the Yankees have such a national following and it's not a regional answer.
Mm-hmm.
It's Dodger town to a certain extent, but there's a lot of Giants fans too. So I would say they're all less than like 15% kind of thing if you want to chop it up. But I would say Yankees.
Yankees is the pick. That's not
just because they're the brand, right?
They're the most loved team in baseball. They're the most hated team in baseball. By the way, BetRivers prop packs are now available for baseball. Bet at least $10 on a pregame baseball wager to earn a prop pack containing player stat targets for the upcoming game. If your player hits the targets, you win the prize on the card. Available in all BetRivers markets except Ohio. There you go. We're left out in here on Ohio because we got to get our stuff together. But everywhere else that you have BetRivers, you can take advantage of that. Well, another message from Byron says, Bull, parlay of the day on BetRivers is Andrew Abbott over 5.5 Ks and the Redlegs money line at plus 180. We don't have the Reds on the docket. So what do you think of that? What do you think of his choice there?
I like it. I think it's a good bet. We did this, I think, the first couple days of the show when I did Shane Smith of the White Sox plus over strikeouts plus the money line. It boosted plus 190 to plus 440 or something like that. And I do think the path to victory for the Reds is through Abbott pitching well. And that's the only side I would play. And if you want to avoid the money line, which is -2 and change at a lot of shops, sometimes people go run line, but there are other options to it. And it's just a nice option to have on your tool belt when you start thinking of same game parlays and things like that. Now, obviously there's a scenario where the Reds win and Abbott doesn't get a lot of strikeouts. And then you're saying blah, blah, blah. But there's also scenarios where the Reds win and don't cover a run line. That's why you're giving, it's the concept of a point spread. I don't want to bet on this team just to win the game. I'll lay points. It's name that song and X amount of tune, right? Like name that tune, whatever verses or whatever. It's you're trying to win in a certain way where you don't have to lay as much lumber or juice. So if you want to just do a prop, like a pitching prop that I would say is correlated to a victory, not necessarily apples to apples or direct, but you're getting plus 180 with a team on the money line that's favored at -205 at BetRivers, and you're adding a prop. I think it's a great way to play it. Makes a lot of sense. And again, plus 180, when the logic is there and you think something's correlated, the two outcomes, you're going to do well in the long run, in my eyes, especially in a tough sport like baseball.
Let's get to the next game here, Doug. Yankees Mariners. I like this game. Two teams obviously that have been good this year. Max Fried is the favorite for the Cy Young, whatever that's worth at this point of the year, or at least I assume he would be. He's 6-0 with a 1.05 ERA. The Yankees have not lost a game that he started. Meanwhile, for the Mariners, kind of under the radar, and he did struggle his last time out, gave up 5 runs to Oakland, but overall, Brian Wu has pitched very well for Seattle. The Yankees have won 5 of 6 overall. As I said, 8-0 when Max Fried starts. Fun game to watch, probably. What do you like in this game, Doug?
Yeah, for me, it's Yankees or pass. I sort of was scared yesterday. I said I was leaning to the Yankees, didn't want to bet into it just because these West Coast trips over the years have just been such a bugaboo for New York. But they did well against Oakland, got the first game in Seattle, and as you mentioned, 5-1 the last 6. Maybe I just have to get past that. Maybe that voodoo or whatever that came on the West Coast trip. So minus $132 feels cheap. Now Wu's been fine, got touched up in his last game, but Max Fried, who by the way is the second favorite behind Skubal.
I should have remembered that.
Yeah, I mean, because it's all about projections. It's not about
right.
what you've done, right? It's
Sure.
why the Cardinals aren't World Series favorites, even though they've won 8 straight. It's about what's going to happen moving
Fair
forward.
point.
I think the Yankees line's pretty cheap. I think this market is a little stubborn on the Yankees. Now, I will say last week, and it's still the case now. So even though the Yanks are in first place and up 7 games above 500, there, if you bet $100 on them or whatever, you'd be down 1.5 units this year because they're usually laying significant juice, and you have to win a lot in order to cover all those times that you lose when you're laying significant juice. I would lay the $1.32. I'm not sold on the Seattle team. We've talked about teams being regressing, and will the Cardinals come back to earth? Will some of these other teams? Man, I think the Mariners are going to come back to earth. I don't buy this team. Some of their bats will stay hot for the most of the year, but I think this is a good spot to bet the Yankees. You always got to be careful, like I said earlier, about being too late to the party. But I think it's a good spot. I think the price is right for me. So I would. It's Yankees or pass. I'm not officially playing it, but it's the only side I would play here. Yanks bats are hot.
There's certain teams, Doug, that because of their popularity, that could sometimes affect the line, in football, or just because more people know the team, so maybe they're more likely to bet on the team, even though it might not make sense. Does the Yankees brand affect their numbers sometimes?
So that absolutely used to be the case, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it still is the case in the futures market.
Yeah.
Which is a one-way betting market. So what do I mean by a one-way betting market? It's something that you can only bet one way, like the Yankees to win the AL or the Yankees to win the World Series. So odds makers, because a lot of their job titles are risk managers. So they're trying to mitigate risk. So if an overwhelming amount come on popular teams, the number will come down. So if the Yankees are 4-1, they'll move it to 3-1, and then the true odds should be higher. But they do that. It's kind of like what they did with Tiger Woods in his peak. We're seeing that with Caitlin Clark in the Indiana Fever. We see that with the Cowboys. But again, just the futures market. Lakers, when they got Luka, were like 8-1 to win the West. When in a vacuum, they'd be like 15-1 or something like that. Because as money comes in, it's classic with horse racing. Horse racing, there's morning line odds, and then as bets come in, they move other odds because they're trying to balance and move the judges' scales, is the visual I always have when they're trying to have a certain hold percentage. So as money comes in, and they're just mitigating risk. And so the fan bases will do that. Why do fan bases do that if the numbers are too low and they're bad, quote unquote, bad odds? Because sports bettors are also sports fans. And what fans want to do is feel closer to the team and emotionally connected. And part of that is betting on that team and being invested. So they will bet on the Cowboys or whatever. And so the Yankees have, quote unquote, skewed odds. Now, why it's not the case in the two-way markets, like a money line in this case. The Yankees, the old days, like 2 decades ago, the Yankees would be like minus 150 today instead of minus 132. But the bookmakers and odds makers respect the market and the sharp money so much. There's so much sharp money that bookmakers are more afraid of that. And I use the word afraid, but they respect it and they will move accordingly and let those sharp guys, let the computer modelers determine what the money line is, because it's a two-way market. They can't just offer minus 150 on the Yankees and that's it. they have to put the Mariners price. So the sharp money will bet the Mariners and move it down. And so they're not worried of the it's like if a regular blackjack player won like 10 hands in a row. The casino's not afraid of them playing the 11th hand because they're getting whatever hold percentage. It's like roulette. If some guy wins roulette 10 reds in a row, or even if he's going back and forth and he wins, the house is still getting the opposite color and the two green numbers.
Right.
So the math is on their side. So in this case, the house is getting the math on their side. They're just going to move the odds based on the respected accounts if they bet the Mariners or whatnot, because the house is still going to win in the long run. So even if the public, who all loves the Yankees, wins on the betting the Yankees, that public's going to turn around and bet other games where the house has a hidden, hold percentage or whatever. And then and they don't, it's okay if the public wins, like
Sure.
Odds makers, it's not the end of the world. They just want fair odds, and just like the casino games and everything is just fair odds and true odds. And so they use the sharp money to shape the money lines nowadays, even when a massively public team like the Yankees are involved.
Makes a lot of sense. And I know our fans appreciate that. Corey said, great to hear how the sausage is made. The insight in terms of the lines that Doug can provide that other people in this business cannot. Doug, let's get to the next game, and that's a great pitching matchup. Diamondbacks at Giants in San Francisco. The Giants have been another surprise good team this year, at least a surprise to me. Brandon Pfaadt, Robbie Ray. Pfaadt's been good. Robbie Ray's been great. And you've got a play that recognizes, essentially, that these are two good starting pitchers.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes the simplest bet is the obvious one. So this is 4.5 runs in the first 5 innings. Now you're laying some juice at 148. So we're a little late to the party on that, but I still think it's the right side. Like you mentioned, it's a good pitching matchup. I think Ray's been excellent going against his former team a little bit as well. And I just like betting on Robbie Ray. Like I kind of know what I'm getting with him when he pitches, and that's sort of what you want as a better. Pfaadt, he's been really good, like you mentioned. I'm a little uneasy, maybe because I just don't. He's a little, not the household name, if you will, that Robbie Ray is. Not that Robbie Ray is Clayton Kershaw, but baseball fans certainly know Robbie Ray, and Pfaadt's getting there. But 4.5's a lot. Giants can hit, like you mentioned. D-backs can definitely hit. So there's an element to the lineup that does concern me. But again, these pitchers are solid, and they'll get out of jams. Cluster hitting is such an important part of baseball, right? You can have 9 hits and no runs, or you can have 3 hits and 5 runs. And I just think these guys know how to work through counts, get out of jams. And 4.5's a relatively big number for a 5-inning run. So even if Pfaadt gives up 3 earned, you still have Ray throwing gems, and maybe he gives up 1, and 3-1 after 5, and that's a winner. Now, again, you're laying the juice, and that should be noted. And maybe you can sneak in a prop there for a same game parlay, like we were talking about earlier with the Reds game. That's something to consider. But I do think that gets home, and that'll be one of my plays as a half unit.
All right, we got one more game on the docket here in addition to Diamondbacks Giants. This is another game that has a very interesting pitching matchup. Not as obvious on paper as Pfaadt and Robbie Ray, but the Royals and the Astros. Framber Valdez over the last couple of years has looked like he was becoming an ace. This year he's been a little inconsistent. His good games have been very good. His bad games have been very bad. And then for the Royals, Chris Bubic, who's a guy who was always highly thought of, couldn't put it together. He seems to have done so this year. This game is starting at 8:10. Royals at the Astros. What do you make of Valdez, who's been Bubic has been great, but Valdez, the ERA almost 4 because the bad starts have been bad.
Right.
This guy's been a reliable pitcher the last couple of years, but he hasn't been this year.
I mean, this is the beauty of social media and beat writers and the internet. You can just dig deep, right? You can go read stuff, comments from the spring training and whatnot. Is Valdez battling something, things along those lines? I would have to dig deeper. That the one concern I have, and I was looking at playing Bubic and the Royals here, is that he did get touched up the last time he faced Houston, and it wasn't very long ago. It was within a couple of weeks, and now that was at home. But he got touched up, 4 earned against 5 innings, and he's coming off 2 great shutout performances, not shutout for the whole game, but scoreless outings. I just wonder if that component to the Astros if it's a bad matchup, things like that. So I'm not in a rush. The plus 120 is certainly attractive, but that's what ultimately why I passed on this game was just the fact that he had been touched up recently by this Houston lineup that, it's pretty darn solid. So
Yeah.
I would I can't fault anyone for grabbing the plus money with the Royals. I would say be careful laying the lumber at 139 currently at Bet Rivers 140. But I do think the Royals with the plus money is where I would go, but I just can't get it. I would just hate myself if Bubic gets touched up again against the same Houston lineup.
Hey, if you're not feeling confident in it, then you don't bet it, right? It's that simple.
You don't have to bet it. But again, we have FOMO. I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. But things like that, I understand.
But Doug, before we recap the picks of today, you have another show, of course, Betting Weekly Fast Break. We got 2 big NBA playoff games tonight, and everybody here is holding their breath with the Cavs playing tonight. They're a big favorite, even though they were awful. Couldn't have played worse in Game 4. And, of course, then you have the Oklahoma City-Denver game, which was a low-scoring, wild game that ended with Oklahoma City evening up that series. So what's going on Fast Break today?
Yeah, you nailed it, man. Top of the hour. Again, brand new show, much like our show here, Betting Weekly Hardball, Betting Weekly Fast Break, 3 p.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday. That's noon Pacific, West Coast time here in Vegas. We're going to react to what we last saw, which was the Celtics going down 3-1. You have the Cavs, like you mentioned, down 3-1. The futures market is certainly interesting right now. And over in the Western Conference, Nuggets were a fourth quarter away from going up 3-1 themselves. It's now 2-2. They're double-digit dogs. My favorite play in the NBA that I've seen in a while is tonight. I'll break that down in the next show coming up in a little over 20 minutes. I really think an over-under play is strong in one of the 2 games, and I'll explain why. But all in all, it's been a great playoffs, a lot of unpredictability. It can be difficult to bet, but we're finding some opportunities through the prop market and things like that. But, baseball is pretty crazy, and the NBA has always been known as this predictable market because of the best of 7 format as opposed to maybe March Madness in college basketball. But this year, it's been incredibly unpredictable. It's been rewarding as a fan. Of course, you hate to see the injuries like we saw with Tatum last night, but give credit to the Knicks. They were winning at the time. They deserve to be up 3-1, even though the games 1 and 2 were kind of fluky. It is what it is, but it makes betting really fun and really difficult. But there's opportunities every day, just like there are opportunities in baseball.
By the way, Donovan Mitchell is questionable for the Cavs, but he was at shoot-around this morning, and so the thought is he's going to play. So
good.
Now, what kind of shape he's in, who knows after the injury he had last game, but he's going to try to give it a go. I'd be shocked if he isn't out there today. All right, Doug, let's recap what you like today. Let's start with the Twins Orioles. Let's start with that one.
Yeah, I know. So we talked about how the Twins have won 8 straight. I like the first 5 over in this game. I think both pitchers that got touched up against these very same lineups not too long ago, a week ago, and I think we see more of it. It's 5.5 runs. Excuse me. So you gotta get the bats out, but I do think it's a shaky pitching performance. I lean Minnesota to make it 9 straight wins, but I like the first 5 over 5.5 as an official play.
Another official play is the under 4.5 through 5 innings in the Arizona Giants game.
A great pitching matchup with Fott and Robbie Ray. Again, 4.5's a bit, the right number, but you got the juice here at minus 148. Didn't love it, but I still think it's worth the play. Again, everything's a half unit for me, easing into it. I didn't love the card today, and I'm not saying anything's a force because I'm happy going no plays for a card. I mean, that's just what you have to do. And as a bettor, maybe not for this show on today's slate, but you always have live wagering too. You can always check it out in game, and Bet Rivers offers a huge menu for that. So if you just kind of wanted to see, like you mentioned, Valdez in the Houston game, like you just kind of want to see his stuff. And I will say, from an in-game betting standpoint, from live betting, the broadcast team is a huge asset. It's usually a pitcher or a catcher who's the analyst in the booth, and they can see stuff right away. Obviously, you can with the location and the speed and just how sharp a pitcher looks. But that broadcaster is going to tell you, and you can sort of get your ears perked up because some guys get out of jams and they clearly don't have their stuff. And a guy will mention that on the broadcast where you may not see certain things. They might notice the bite on a curveball a little bit differently than you would at home. And having not played the sport like the broadcaster had, and he's just retired. So he knows his stuff. So I'd listen to the broadcast a lot. There's a lot of valuable information with the color analyst or whatever you want to call the former athlete in the booth. And I think that can help the in-game wagering. So maybe that's a good approach for Valdez because he's kind of feast or famine or hot or cold, like you mentioned, Adam. So that's one way to do it if you sort of trust your own instincts and want to wait, between half innings and things like that.
Thanks to everybody who joined us today. We appreciate it. Join us back again tomorrow. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube page. Again, we'll be back on tomorrow. It'll be Doug and I again at 2 o'clock. Stick around. In 20 minutes from right now, it's Bet Weekly Fast Break. Again, getting into all that NBA stuff that Doug alluded to there and WNBA down the line as well. Well, thanks to Alex and Chris for producing. We'll see you next time on Bet Weekly Hardball. See ya.